Hi, this is Kat with Beadaholique, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make the 12 warp spiral Kumihimo kits by Beadaholique. Now you can get all of these kits and all of these supplies by heading over to beadaholique.com. So in this tutorial I'm going to walk you through the basic steps from start to finish on how to do this beautiful kit. But before I dive in, I want to show you the 4 different colorways which we offer here at Beadaholique. Alright, so the colorway that I'm going to be doing here is this beautiful gold, teal, and coral, and it has a nice little spiral effect. So if you're familiar with if you're familiar with 8 warp Kumihimo, 12 warp is a little bit different. So you can see that that gold spiral there, that kind of pops out from the big spiral that's happening. So it kind of creates a really cool little effect there. So this is the 12 warp. So that's what we're going to be teaching you here today. So I'm going to be doing the coral and teal and gold version. But we do also have a beautiful kind of nautical style where it is white, blue, and gold. And then I have this fun orange, blue, and white. And then we also have a pink, purple, and white. And these are both silver. So you can choose all of these. You can mix and match. Feel free to do so. You'll get your coordinated color seed beads and your cord. And you'll also get your clasp. Now, one thing that you know that we do here at Beadaholique is we have our full kits and our refill kits. So we have the full kit, which is everything that you see here. We have our bobbins, our super new glue, and our disc. Now, if you wanted to, let's say you really bought this one and you loved it, so you needed the disc and the bobbins and the glue and all that jazz, but then you wanted to go back and make this kit. Well, what we've done is we've broken it down for you, so what you'll actually get is you'll just get the cord, the clasp, and the coordinated beads. So you'll still be able to make the kit because you'll still have plenty of glue left over and you'll still have your disc and your bobbins. These are definitely reusable and we encourage you to do that. So if you already have some of this stuff, you don't need to buy the full kit. You can just purchase a refill kit. But I must warn you, if you've bought an 8 warp kit in the past, please be aware that you'll need 4 extra bobbins. So you can always buy one of these full kits and then head on to the refill kits. And you know, you can never have too many bobbins, so if you get a few extra, no biggie. All right, so what you won't get with this kit is you won't get a weight. So today I'm going to be using a gator weight, and we do sell these at beadaholique.com, but you can also use a binder clip with like a little bag of pennies. You just need something to give a little tension to that braid. And then you'll just need a pair of scissors or snips just to help us out with that cord. All right, so we're going to go ahead and begin, and I'm going to take a ruler here, and this is another really helpful tool. And what we're going to do is we're going to measure out 10 feet of our s-lon cord here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And you can see I'm being very generous with that measurement because it is easier to add the beads and it's extremely difficult to add cord, so we're not going to do that here. So if you're unsure about the length that you want, go ahead and add a little extra here. You can do 12 feet if you want. You clearly have enough of the s-lon left over, so we're going to be doing 6 lengths of 10 feet each. And I'm just going to go ahead and measure it against the one that I've already gotten here. Where did my cord go? Come here. There we go. It was hiding from me. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and measure out our next length. And I'm going to do all 6, and I'll meet you back here in just a moment. Okay, so I have both ends here. So I'm just going to hold those with my fingers and just find the midpoint all the way down here. So this is the midpoint of all of those lengths together. So I'm just going to do a really simple overhand knot. So I'm just going to take that loop and take it over the top and put it through the center. And don't worry if this gets a little messy. It is just to secure our knot there at the end. This is not all going to be cut off. All right, so I'm just going to give it a nice little tug there at the bottom. And if you want, you can do an extra knot. I think mine's okay though. All right, so now the next step we're going to do is because we are using our 11O seed beads, these are going to be nice and tiny, which is going to be great to use because it's going to create that nice tight little spiral effect. However, I find it that it can be sometimes difficult to string on the s-lon. Now this is a step that you can skip if you desire, but I recommend doing it. So what I have here over here is I have some just plain kind of printer paper. And I also have some Post-it notes. I think these are just going to be really helpful here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to separate out my cords here. And what I want to do is we're going to be adding a little bit of glue to each end. So I just want to separate them out. And I'm going to use the sticky side of the Post-it note to help me do that. So let's just separate out a couple here. And since you have 12, you can go ahead and kind of just make sure that they all have their own little space here. And this doesn't have to be pretty. This is just, again, just to kind of help secure it to the table there. All right. And I'm actually going to separate this out a little bit. Now, like I said, you don't have to do this step. I find it to be a little bit easier. The super new glue actually helps to create a little needle-like effect. And since you are going to be stringing a lot of beads, this part, I know it seems tedious, but it just makes the whole thing just that much easier. All right, so this is what we have so far here. So now I'm going to take the super new glue here. And this is not as thick as like an E6000. It's really kind of watery. So what we want to do is we just want to take a little dab to one of the ends, and you'll see that it just comes out there, and just kind of slide it along the end there. And you don't want too much. So you just want to do about the last inch and a half or so, and just kind of smooth it out. So you can just see that the cord just gets a little dark and shiny. So that is one. All right, now I'm going to repeat this for all of them, and you can see why we use the computer paper there. And you just want to kind of just get a little bit on there. And this is just creating a hard needle-like surface for that s-lon. All right, so I'm going to do all 12, and then I'm going to let it dry for about 20 minutes or so. You'll be able to see when it gets hard and is no longer tacky, because that's what we want to do. And then I'll be back here to show you how to string up the beads, and then we're going to get to some braiding of our Kumihimo braid. So we have all of our cords here. And these are the ends with all those glued tips. So what you can see is you can see that it creates a nice little stiff needle-like point that's going to be easier to help us string on our beads. So before we string our beads, I want to show you how to set up the Kumihimo disc. So go ahead and find that end with the knot on it. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our gator weight and we're just going to clip it right onto that knot. And this is the same with that binder clip, but this is also why it's nice to have that loop there at the bottom. So if you needed to hang something from that, you could do that as well. All right, so let's bring in our disc, and we're just going to drop this down into the center there. So we have 12 cords, so we need to position them accordingly. So before we do our colors here, all you need to know is that you take one cord and put it on either side of the 2 up here. And then we're going to take another cord and put it on either side of our 8. And then moving down here, we're going to go on either side of our 14. And just getting some of those out of the way. Okay, and now we're going to go on either side of the 18 here. And either side of the 24. And either side of the 30. All right, so now I'm just going to kind of adjust these guys and make sure that my little gator weight is in the center. All right, and the reason we use the weight is so that we have good tension, because you want this to be nice and taut, because it's going to create that nice spiral braid. So that's why we want to add some weight to there, whether it's a bag of pennies or the gator weight. But if you end up doing a lot of Kumihimo, this is a great investment. Okay, so this is how our disc looks. Now, we have all the same color cord, but we're going to coordinate our beads. So as we string on our beads, I'm going to tell you that the ones surrounding the 8 and the 24, these are going to be our gold beads. Now the ones surrounding the 2 and the ones surrounding the 14, these are going to be our coral beads. And our remaining ones on the 30 and the 18, these are going to be our teal beads. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to grab the cord that is between the 7 and the 8, and I'm just going to kind of snake that out of the pile here. And let's just kind of set all of the other stuff aside, and I'm going to come in, and you'll notice that the end of this is really stiff, but just as a little extra tip, I'm going to take my snips and come in and kind of cut it at a little bit of an angle, and that's going to give me an even easier point to pick up those beads. All right, so I have my gold beads here. Now, approximately, depending on how tight your braid is going to be, you're going to want to do at least 55 beads to get about a 6.5, 7-inch bracelet. So as we're picking up our beads here, you can just count. Now, if you're off, you'll know it towards the end, but you can also unwind your bobbins as you get towards the end if you find that you need to add more beads. So don't get too hung up in, oh no, how many beads is it in the very beginning? That's okay. Just add about 55, because you can do less than that if you get to a length where you're like, oh no, that's the length I want. You can just stop adding the beads. You can also, like I said, unwind the bobbins and add more beads to each cord as well. All right, so I'm just going to continue to string these on. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 55 beads on each strand in the colorway that I mentioned. We're going to do the gold, the coral, and the teal. So once I have all of my beads strung on here, I'm going to wind up my bobbins. And let's say this is all 55 there, but just to show you ahead, we have our bobbins. So you just slide that in there and just wind it around, all the way around. And you want to leave, I'd say, about a foot out. And what you can do is you can also slide some of those beads in there and wrap those inside the bobbin and just leave a few of them outside the bobbin. So you want maybe just about 8 inches or a foot or so. So that's what it'll look like, and you can have your beads out and some of them in because you're going to have quite a few beads on here. So that is how you wind the bobbins. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 55 beads, wind my bobbins, and I'll be back and we're going to actually start doing the braid. Okay, so our disc is all set up and ready to go, and I just kind of splayed it out here so you could see the pattern just one more time. So I have my coral up here, my gold to the side, and my teal on the other side. All right, so we have everything ready to go, and we have our nice little gator clip in the center. So let's go ahead and pick it up, and we're gonna start our braiding. All right. To begin, we're going to take the cord that is between 18 and 19 right down here, and we're going to go ahead and lift that out of the notch. And I'm going to bring it up and over and put it between the 28 and the 29. And go ahead and set that in and make sure it's nice and secure. And then, since I'm already up here, I'm going to take the cord that's between the 30 and the 31, and I'm going to bring that down and I'm going to bring it over and put it between the 16 and the 17. And just slide that right in there. And then I'm going to take the one between the 14 and the 15, go ahead and pop that out, and I'm going to lift it up and over, and I'm going to go to the 32 and the 1, and then I'm going to move to the one that is between the 2 and the 3, go ahead and lift that out, and I'm going to bring that down here to the one between the 12 and the 13, and go ahead and set that in. So that's one little section there. So now we're going to rotate about 90 degrees counterclockwise, so just like that. And now I'm going to take the one between the 24 and the 25 and bring it up and over between the 6 and the 7, and take the one between the 8 and the 9 and bring that up and over and bring it down to the 22 and 23, and then rotate 90 degrees. So that is considered one full rotation. So now we're just going to repeat. So it's very simple. Of course, our numbers are going to change, but you're always taking the one that is farthest to the left down here and bringing it up just to the left of the top ones. And then you take the one that is towards the center there and bring it down and across. And then we lift this one and bring it up, and lift this one and bring it down. And then we rotate 90 degrees. Lift this one up and over, and up and over, and rotate 90 degrees. So just remember that you're doing your X here without rotating. That tends to trip some people up. So we want to do our little X here, rotate, and then we do our cross here. And you can see that that braid is just barely starting to form. I'm going to do a few more rotations here, just so we can see that all come together. Now you'll notice that I'm doing this without adding any beads. And the reason that we do that is because we want to build up a little bit of the end cord that we're going to actually tuck into our clasp. So I say go ahead and do about an inch or so. You don't need that much, but an inch or so is safe to just clip off the ends when we go to do our clasp. So this also is really great. It helps you get used to the braid before you get to the little bit more advanced technique of adding the beads. All right, then just keep rotating. Now, if at any point you need to pause, go ahead and stop when you're doing the crossways one. So we have our X going this way and we have our cross this way. If you leave 3 up and 1 down here, like I have it, you can go ahead and set this down. And then when you pick it back up, you know exactly where you're starting from. Because if you put this one down and you rotate it, you might not remember that you're starting from the same point here, but you'll always know that last little move. So that's just a little tip as you're doing this. This is a great little project if you're traveling, if you're on the road, because once you have your Kumihimo disc set up, there's no scissors or anything else needed, so you can at least do all the braiding while you're, you know, on a road trip. So really fun little thing. All right. So off camera here, I'm going to continue to do about 1 inch of the braid because I want you to see what that looks like, and then I'll be back to show you what it's going to look like when we start to add our beads. Okay, so I'm just going to take this last one here and bring it down, and then I'm going to do my rotation. There we go. All right, so now I'm sort of back to the beginning, so I'm going to start to add my beads. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick up in the same order as I have been, take that bead and just sort of slide it down into the bead weaving there. And then I'm just going to catch it underneath that cord and bring it across. So all we're doing is we're doing the same braiding pattern, but we're just dropping a little bead into the center there. And you just sort of do the same with every cord. So just sort of pick up 1 bead, make sure you're only getting 1 bead at a time, and just sort of making sure it gets nice and snug down there. And we just bring it across. And again, let's just continue. And these will be easier to see, so I have those beautiful coral beads, so we'll kind of notch that in there. So you can see that kind of staying underneath that little cord. And we just do it again. So now you're just doing the same braiding pattern, and you're just adding beads. Do our little rotation. And going down. And I'm just sort of using my nails to kind of just make sure that he sits underneath there. So you can just sort of see that your purpose there is to kind of trap the beads underneath those cords, because that is how they're going to lay a little right. So you can see that I'm just kind of using my finger underneath the board to just kind of help guide it into place. And then we rotate. So this is the same thing with the beads. So all we're going to do now is we're just going to continue to do our braid. And like I said earlier, you can do all 55 beads to get to about 6.5, 7 inches, or you can just stop whenever you've reached your desired size. So you can just kind of peek underneath and see, and just kind of measure the braid with the beaded portion to see how long you want to get it. And don't forget that that clasp is going to be about 1 inch, just under 1 inch actually. All right, so I'm going to leave it with my 3 up and 1 down, so I'm just going to kind of flip it over here so you can sort of see what's happening. So we have our unbraided portion here, and then you can start to see that we're adding our beads there. Now they're going to start to sit a little flat, but what could happen is you could actually get a bead stuck, and if that does happen, you can come in with a little pair of pliers. So I recommend kind of checking underneath occasionally just to see if you need to pop one down or rotate anything at this stage, because it's easier to do it when your braid is still a little bit loose on top than it is at the very, very end when you see that that a bead has sort of gotten trapped in the braid. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. All right, so I'm going to keep doing my braid with my beads, and then I'll show you how to finish it off with that great magnetic clasp. So as you get to working on your braid, you'll notice that I have 5 beads left on each of my bobbins, but before I kind of continue, I just want to take my ruler and see if this is enough. So I've done about 50 beads, so I strung 55, and you know what? That's going to be good enough for me. So I'm going to take it to about 6¼ inches there. And I'm going to stop adding beads. So in order to do that, it's really simple. All you do is just stop adding beads. So I am going to add this last one because I left my 3 up and 1 down. So this will be my last bead here. And I'm just going to drop that down in there and bring it across. And then I'm just going to continue. You can just leave the beads on there as long as you just remember to not pick them up. We're just going to do our Kumihimo again, and we're going to build up that area without the beads on it so that we can cover it with our clasp. So I'm going to leave about 1 inch more without beads, and then I'll be back to show you how to finish off the clasp. So we have our finished beaded portion and our unfinished unbeaded portion here. So we're ready to go ahead and cut this off. So I'm going to start by removing my little gator weight from the other side and just set that aside. And now we can flip all this over. And just with your snips, now be careful if you do still have some beads on there, they might go flying, but you can just go ahead and snip all of those cords off and set all of your bobbins aside. And I'm just going to snip these off real quick. And I'm leaving them on the disc as I kind of work my way around. There we go. 2 more and 2 more. All right. I have some beads flying everywhere, so I'm just going to take a second to get all them out of the way. There we go. We don't need any of that anymore, so we can just set that aside. And you do see that you do have some extra beads there, so if you did want a longer bracelet, we are definitely giving you the opportunity to do that. All right, so now I'm just coming from underneath, and I'm just going to kind of pull them out of my disc, just like so. And we're going to gather all those cords and just make one big overhand knot here. Just wrapping it around. Just a big knot. Don't worry, it doesn't have to be pretty. We're going to cut it off anyway, but we just don't want our cords to start unraveling before we have a chance to glue them all together. All right, there we go. So we have our nice little knot there. So now, as you can see, what we need to do is we're going to build up a little bit of this extra cord here to fit inside of our clasp. So here's my magnetic clasp. Here's my magnetic clasp, so you can go ahead and separate those 2 ends there. So I'm going to do one side in the video here for you. So go ahead and take some of that extra s-lon that you have and cut off, I'd say maybe, give or take, about 12 to 15 inches. You don't need a whole lot. So we're just going to snip that off. And then I'm going to come in underneath my braid here and just tie a little overhand knot. And I want my knot to sit as close to the beaded portion as possible. So this is just a little overhand knot here, right over the beaded portion. And just make sure that you haven't caught any of those beads in there. All right, we're going to give it a nice little tug. And then I'm just going to repeat that again and just doing a nice little overhand knot and bringing that down together. All right, now I can take my short end and I'm going to kind of fold it up my braid. And what I'm going to do with this long end here is I'm just going to wrap it around to sort of bulk up that little braid that's there, because we want it to fit nice and snugly into our little end cap there. So I'm trying to keep a nice tight little wrap. And what you want to do is you want to build up about 1/4 to 1/2 an inch of this little portion here. I'm just kind of twisting it around, and again, don't worry, this doesn't have to look pretty. It'll all go into that clasp there, but we just want to kind of take our time and see if we can hide a little bit of it so we get that nice sleek look to it. All right, and just as a visual reference, what I'm going to do is show you here. So we have our little tube there, and this is the open well, but as you kind of look on the side, you'll notice that the magnet only comes down about 1/8 of an inch or so. So we have all that space to kind of fill. So I need to move up a little bit further just to make sure that it's going to sit nice and flush with my braid there. You see what I'm trying to do? Okay, so now we're just going to build up a little bit more at the top here. And there we go. Okay. All right, so now I'm bringing the short end together with my long end, and I'm just going to tie an overhand knot. I'm going to try to do this one-handed so I don't lose that tension that I have there. There we go. And just bring that down nice and tight. And again, just securing that with one more little overhand knot. Oops. All right, and pull nice and tight. There we go. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with my scissors or snips here, and I'm just going to trim off those ends just like so. And now what we want to do is before we snip off this, I want to get my glue ready. So it's ready to go there. And what we're going to do is we're going to drop a couple little drops into our well there. I'm going to cut this off, and then we are going to sort of work it into the well. Now, if you want to just kind of double check, what I recommend you do is go ahead and sort of, you might need to saw this off. This is a lot of cord here, so I'm just kind of cutting it. There we go. So you can sort of just judge and just make sure that that's going to fit in there. And it looks like I have a pretty good fit, so now I'm just going to gently take that off. Let's go ahead and add our glue. And you're going to want to do about 3 drops or so of your super new glue. And just make sure that it kind of gets all the way all along the sides there. And you can just kind of roll it in your fingers just to get it a nice coating, because we want it to be nice and secure for us. Make sure you close your glue back up real quick. There we go. And now we're going to slip that on. And I like to kind of just twist it as I push it down. That way you kind of get all that glue in there and it's taking all the cord with it. So that is one end. I'm going to do the other end really quick, and then I'm going to show you our finished product. So this is the piece I just finished. So I did both ends there, and you'll notice my last little tip for you today is that I want you to let it dry for 24 hours stretched out. Don't try to link it together, because sometimes the glue can seep through around that little magnet there, and you will end up with your bracelet completely fused, and we don't want that to happen. But this is the one I did earlier, so you can see those magnetic clasps are really nice and strong, and that's why we love using the super new glue for this. So these are the 12 warp Kumihimo kits. You can choose your favorite colors and then choose which one you want to do the refill for. So these are our 4 beautiful colors, that beautiful coral and teal, our blue and white, our orange and blue, and our beautiful lavender. So choose your favorite and enjoy. Thanks for watching. You can get all of these supplies and even more beautiful Beadaholique kits by heading over to beadaholique.com.